All right, Jenny. One time I had a therapist fall asleep on me in the chair.
God.
To be fair, I showed up week after week dishing out my daily dose of, I saw him with somebody else and he wants to take another break. Do you think he still loves me? Yeah.
God. And
Yeah.
this is not your
What
current
a
husband. Just want to be
No, no,
clear.
no, not my current husband. No, 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 no. What a 28-year-old Julie was dumb. Like, wake up. Anyway, she fell asleep.
Gotta love us. Gotta love our 20-year-old selves. Well, that is a great segue into today's episode because today we are diving into the latest poll data around mental health and how we are managing it, how we are maybe not managing it, and just generally how we are supporting mental health in this really complicated stage of midlife. But before we get to the very interesting poll data, let's do our midlife moments. So I'll kick it over to you, Julie.
All right. I don't have any big aha midlife moments. So I'm just going to throw a bunch of midlife words and phrases at you, Jenny, and at our listeners to give you a flavor for what the last couple of weeks have been like over here. Those words are ice dams, oil tank replacement, and lost heat sporadically. And it's got me just missing the days of living in an apartment by myself where I could call my super who lived in the basement to come change a light bulb for me. Those were the fucking days. So easy.
So easy. So easy. Yeah, adulting is really hard. Well, especially in the middle of winter. I'm sorry that these things are all happening probably at the same time too. And really cheap fixes, it sounds like. My midlife moment happened last week. I would say this is a quarterly thing for me where I had just like a meltdown or a tantrum over this, what feels like Groundhog Day for meal planning, or just meals in general. The thinking about what I'm going to cook, the trying to find recipes that are going to be fast and relatively healthy and acceptable to all of my family members, and then writing down the things I have to get, and then going to the grocery store, and then prepping the food, and then cooking the food, and cleaning up the food. And really, like, there's maybe 10 minutes of this entire process that I enjoy, which is the eating of the food. I hate it. I hate thinking about it. It takes up so much space in my brain. And yeah, every quarter, I have like a meltdown around it. So I feel a little bit better. I did that last week. I'm probably good for another couple months, but it'll come again. And I can't wait. Maybe one day I'll win the lottery and hire a personal chef and I can take this off my to-do list.
And until then, I have 3 words for you: cereal for dinner.
That
Make
is
it
easy.
easy.
That is easy. Yes. Okay. Maybe it'll be like Wednesday cereal night. I like it. I'll add it to the routine.
All right. All right. Mental health. Let's get
Yes.
into. So, listeners, this one is one of our heavier topics. We promised you, or we told you when we started out this journey, that some of our topics would have a lot of levity and be fun and juicy, and some would be a little bit more serious. And you asked for that. So we're giving the listeners what you want. We're going to talk about mental health in midlife and how we manage it, how we talk to our kids about it, what language we use, maybe how we're not managing it. And we're going to hear from our poll respondents because everybody has a different journey and everybody has their own way of managing mental health. And I think we can all learn a thing or two by hearing what everybody else around us is doing.
Absolutely. And I think, this prompted some external research for us as well. And so this has been a really interesting learning experience for us as we've prepared for this episode. So thank you to everyone who responded to the poll, who was honest and vulnerable in the poll. But before we jump in, just a disclaimer, I think you all know at this point, we are not mental health professionals. So we are not providing any advice or guidance outside of just sharing our own experiences, sharing what we've learned from the poll data. And really our goal here is to, talk about this openly and hope that this, sparks some ideas, some interests, and just discussion with your community. So we will include some resources in the show notes, but again, just wanted to put that out there before we jump in. All right. So let's get into the data. So we're going to start with our poll. So we asked a bunch of questions around mental health. More specifically, first we asked, what are people doing to support their mental health? The most common response at 74% was exercise. So people are moving their bodies. And, I think exercise can be lots of different things for different people, but that was a really high number. So that was exciting to see. Next was at 47% medication. So, I'm assuming prescription medication in order to support whatever mental health challenges you are facing. After that, nutrition at 32%. So, what we're eating has an impact, brain body connection, I believe. And then finally, last on the list at 26% was talk therapy. Julie, thoughts on this?
Find a talk therapist that won't fall asleep on you, number one.
Number one priority stays awake.
Yeah. I put those 4 data points or those 4 questions sort of into 2 categories, kind of preventative or best practices, right? And intentional interventions. So, things like exercise and nutrition, we all know there's lots of data to support that that is a good thing for your mental health, right? Things like medication and talk therapy, I think of those as more active interventions, like I'm raising the flag. I need help. So I'm going to seek these things out. You agree with that, Jenny?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. And I will say I was surprised. If I had to have just guessed based on my no knowledge, just anecdotal conversations with friends in my community, I thought more people would have responded with talk therapy, especially because therapy has become more accessible than it used to be, and there's so much benefit to it. I was surprised by that. I thought the number would be higher there, so that was interesting to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Same.
All right. So next we asked about support systems. So who are you talking to? Who are you leaning on when you need some sort of support with your mental health? At the top of the list was friends at 70%. So we're talking to our friends, which I loved. Right after that was partners at 58%. So those were the primary sources of support. Coming in third at 30% was professional support. So that's a combination of a mental health professional or your PCP, like your healthcare professional. And finally, we asked, how are you getting your information? Do you know who and where to go to if you do need help? 63% of you feel informed, which is great. But 21% of you indicated that you're not sure and you might not have enough information.
Jenny, the friends and partners. Friends, that doesn't surprise me too much because I think that, I don't know, sometimes it's just easier, more comfortable to talk to her as a woman, to talk to a girlfriend, right? Or to talk to somebody that maybe isn't as close to me on a day-to-day basis. Like nobody knows me more intimately than my husband. And while that's a beautiful thing, it also sometimes isn't super helpful when I'm talking about mental health. Does that make sense?
Totally. Totally. I was not surprised by this number. And I think also, for me, my closest friends are female. And so I think in many ways it feels more comfortable to share certain things with them because they might understand it intrinsically more than my husband who's a man. And also like sometimes I want, my mental health is caught up in my family and my relationship with my husband. And so it's sometimes really helpful to have kind of a neutral, more third party person. And in fact, I say neutral, but do you ever wonder, like, maybe we go to our friends because we really just want to talk to an echo chamber and we just want someone to be like, yes, you are right. And, yes, that's so hard versus, my husband, who I think has more of a reason to want to solution and fix it because it impacts our life so closely. Yeah.
100%. And you bring up a really good point, Jenny, and one that we heard from some of our respondents, which was AI. And when I think about AI, I think about validation. So
Mhm.
there are people turning to Gemini and ChatGPT to talk to about their mental health. And I think that that is a whole ball of wax we could spend a lot of time talking about whether or
Mhm.
not that's a good thing, how healthy that is, how destructive it could be, all the things.
Yeah, I can only imagine 5 years from now what this conversation would be like. I think a lot has changed and will continue to change. And I think it's really uncharted territory. This idea of AI as a therapist, we're just at the
Yeah.
brink of it.
Yeah.
All right, some additional things that we uncovered from the data. The most significant barrier to seeking help for folks that need help is time. No shocker there. Many respondents expressed feeling depleted or drowning while trying to manage their own lives outside of their children and their parents. So, this goes into a whole nother topic, which is really relevant for this midlife phase that we're in. It's not just our mental health. We are responsible in some capacity for the mental health of others, particularly our children, our parents. We're kind of in the middle right now. So, thoughts on that, Julie? Caring for others and how that impacts us?
I mean, I have personal experience with having little kids and caring for and grieving aging parents who are no longer with us, and it's a special kind of hell. It's really heavy. And I think the time thing, this is interesting because I think that for me in the past, that's been somewhat of a cop out because I could find plenty of ways to waste my time. Like if I look at my day and I really need to get some time back, I can easily do it. And so I do think it's more about prioritizing your mental health. Again, I'm not talking about everybody. Time looks different for everybody, but I do think that it's more about prioritizing.
Another complicated layer to this is there is still this. I don't know if it's so much the stigma, but just this deprioritization externally around our mental health versus our physical health. Like if you broke your arm or if you have a heart condition, like you will find the time to go see a doctor. However, if you are really struggling with your mental health, there isn't that same external push to like, this is so important, you need to do it. So I agree, we could probably find the time, but I think our external kind of forces are not really promoting how important this is. I do think it's changing. I think, if we talked about this 10 years ago or 20 years ago, I think we're in a much better place now. It's really starting to become apparent how important this stuff is, but there's systemic reasons why we don't prioritize our mental health. So it's tough.
Yep. Yep. And also too, if you grew up in a house where mental health wasn't prioritized or any sort of mental health challenge was seen as a weakness, like you're going to carry that with you through adulthood. And so I think it's just a combination of things: systemic, societal, cultural, and our own messy brains.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And one thing I did want to point out this around the topic of our mental health suffering, if our kids' mental health is suffering, this came up a lot in the comments. We asked people like what's keeping them up at night, and over again, it's issues related to their kids. Either their kids are struggling or they're worried about their kids for one reason or another. And I did a little bit of research in this topic around this idea of empathy. There are two categories of empathy that we can kind of fall into, and one being much more optimal than the other. So, the first one is called empathetic distress. So, this happens when you are sharing the same painful feelings as your child. So, for example, your child is anxious. You are anxious. And research shows that this often leads to burnout and can actually make the child's pain worse because when you're now anxious, they lose their emotional anchor, which is you, the parent. Like they need that sturdy parent. So that's called empathetic distress. The other version, which is more optimal, is empathetic concern. So this is when you are still recognizing that your child is suffering. You are supporting them, you want to help, but you do maintain that awareness that you are a distinct person. And research indicates that parents who practice this kind of other oriented concern actually remain calmer and are better able to help their children regulate. And I found this so interesting. I want to have the empathetic concern. I find it really hard, even though logically I know I am my own person. I am my own distinct person. I find it really hard not to fall into that empathetic distress area. So, yeah, it's
Same.
tough.
Absolutely. I've always been this way. Like codependence runs deep in me. I think for a lot of parents too, when you take on your children's anxiety or worries like that, you can't help but take that on as part of your identity, and it's not good. It's not good for your kiddo, it's not good for you, and it can be really hard to unwind. I love that quote. I'm only as happy as my happiest child.
Mhm. Mhm. So
Get a
true.
tattoo of that. Especially like I consider myself to be a highly sensitive person. So I'm hyper vigilant. I notice the energy right away with those that are around me. And it is very hard for me to see somebody, my husband, one of my kiddos, walk into a room and seem like something's bothering them and not like all these alarm bells are going off of like, what's wrong? What happened? How can I fix it? And it's not helpful to anybody.
No, you're on it. I mean, you probably go from here to here. I mean, immediately as soon
Always.
as you see that, even if you were having a great day. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the struggle is real, and I think again talking about it is helpful, recognizing that it's really hard to do. But the more we talk about it, I think the more we can start to remember that yes, we are distinct people, and we're here to help them through it, not be in the trenches always with them.
And our kids have agency. At least
Yeah.
the ones that are beyond like certain age, they have agency.
And well, I'll add, I also think they need to build resilience. And so, our immediate response to try and fix it so we can oftentimes satisfy our own discomfort is not giving them the tools to learn to use their agency and to fix it themselves. Now, this is some situations. There are some situations where we do have to step in, but I do think that there is this gray area. But we could go on and on about this topic. Let's bring it back to us. Screw those kids. Let's talk about us. No.
For those
So we
kids
did
in their frictionless world.
they're stupid problems, right? No, they're big problems. But all right. So we wanted to round this out with some additional research. So a couple of things that I found really interesting were this idea of this U-shaped curve where historically happiness would dip in the 40s and rise in the 60s. So we're talking about this midlife moment right now and how at this stage happiness used to dip. However, there was some new research put out last year that says that this pattern is starting to disappear and that psychological distress tends to decrease linearly as people age. So, what that means is we actually, our distress goes down as we get older. And I don't know what's behind that. I definitely want to dig into that, but I thought that was at least a promising statistic that, getting old doesn't mean unhappiness. In fact, it could mean the
I
opposite.
mean, that's why grandparents and all those pickleball players I see out there, they're so happy.
They're
They're so
so
light.
happy. They are. They are. I know. It's true. And I think maybe a combination of like modern medicine, we're living longer, we're healthier longer. Who knows? We'll report back when we get to that pickleball age. Another interesting research finding is there was a study in 2025 that this is specifically for women in midlife. A common psychological experience for women in midlife characterized by feelings of invisibility and inconsequentiality. This found that this average age, there's this shift at 53, and it's just all around like societal attitudes about aging and beauty. So sometimes there is this dip, and it's specifically for women who start to maybe feel invisible or inconsequential at this middle age stage. And I'd be curious if it was the same for men. This was only done for women.
I thought you were going to say, I'd be curious if this is true for you, Julie, since you're older.
I mean, do you feel inconsequential, Julie? Because you're very consequential in my life.
Thank you. I don't, but I do. I can totally understand why this happens.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. You found some stuff too. Tell us what you found.
Yeah, back to friendships, coping mechanisms. So, most of the data, all of the studies we looked at indicates that women are way more likely to seek social support and reflect on emotions during midlife, while men may respond more impulsively to the fear of aging with sudden lifestyle changes and a yearning for getting their youth back. Red
Mm.
sports car, anyone?
I was thinking the same thing. Is that still the thing? I feel like that
No,
needs to change. Are men still getting red sports cars? No, they're getting like
I
some
don't think
crazy
so. I don't think so.
technology.
What's the new red sports car? I don't know.
I don't either. I don't either.
And so also modern psychology is really reframing this stage of structural transformation. So current research suggests that midlife is the point where we as individuals shift from rushing outward, so seeking titles and status and the LinkedIn trap of going up, up, up to more looking inward. So, kind of seeking core values and life purpose. This came up in our goals episode, and this one really hits for me. I don't know when it happened, but there was a period of my life and my husband's life where we're climbing and climbing and climbing. And now we're at this stage where we're closer to the other side, way closer to the other side than we were to starting out. And for us and for me specifically, it feels really good because I am in this like, I don't give a shit mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And that's empowering. There's something that's empowering.
Yes.
It's a good feeling. It's a good
It
feeling to not give a shit.
is. Giving less shits, I think that has been the greatest part for me of midlife is that my priorities have shifted and I just don't care about as many things as I used to. And that's freeing. I feel like silly things used to take up so much of my brain space. And granted, it's still full of other things, but yeah, like not giving a shit about somewhat feels like trivial things these days is freeing.
Yeah. And we could do a whole episode on that and how each of us values different things at different stages of life, because there was a time when I valued the title and I valued the status and I valued maybe the lifestyle and now I just don't. And I think a lot of people, at least a lot of people that I've talked to go through that.
Yeah.
So,
Let's do an episode about that. Like, what are the things that you don't care about anymore? And what are the things that you care about more now than you did when you were younger?
yeah.
All right. Coming soon.
Okay, on it. On it. All right. The oxygen mask biology. And as recently as I think it was last year, 2025, there was a neuroimaging study. I love geeking out on anything neuroscience. It showed that when a parent is in a state of fight or flight, high cortisol, we talk about that a lot, because of their child's stress, they lose access to their prefrontal cortex. That's the part of the brain, guys, where we need it to be intact for problem solving skills.
Hmm.
So, research suggests that physiological distancing, taking 30 seconds to focus on your own breathing before responding to a child, it actually re-engages your logical brain. There's actual neuroscience to support this. It's telling your nervous system, I am not the one in danger. My child is just having a hard time.
Mm,
I
mm.
can't tell you, Jenny, since we found that study and that quote right there, I've actually said it a few times. My inner self talk when my kiddo is really upset about something or having a hard time, to remind myself, this kind of goes back to what you were saying. I am not in danger. My child is having a hard time and he or she is a distinct person and so am I. And it's incredibly helpful.
Wow. Wow. So, really, the kind of hack that we are uncovering here is like take those 30 seconds and those deep breaths and that self talk, and you'll shift from the empathetic distress to the empathetic concern. So you can make better decisions. Is that kind of what that leads to?
Definitely. And I think sometimes it's just a matter of changing our own physiology. So maybe it's not taking some deep breaths. Maybe it's, squeezing and unsqueezing your fists. Maybe it's holding an ice cube. There's science behind just it's kind of like when after a dog is playing or barking a lot at a mail carrier, all of a sudden the dog might just like shake itself, right? Shake all the water off, shake all the drool off. Like they're actually doing that to change the physiology to kind of,
Mm.
it's sort of like a reboot. So I think if we can find ways that work for us to sort of reboot our nervous system, everybody wins.
Yes, I love it. I
All
love it.
right. So let's talk a little bit about us. Let's pull back the curtain, Jenny, on what you and I are doing to manage our mental health, if you're comfortable with that. We haven't really
Yes,
talked too much about before, yeah?
let's talk about it. That's why we're here. Let's talk about it.
All right. I'll go first. Everybody knows from the kickoff of this episode that I am no stranger to therapy. I was one of the OGs back in uh, 2001, embracing the hell out of it. But in addition to that, I do not drink, and that's a whole other topic for a future episode. But I will say it's been a game changer for me. It's been a real game changer. I also take Zoloft. I've done talk therapy in the past, and I know what my body needs to feel good. I don't feel well when I don't move. I don't feel well when I'm not eating right. And I've done a fair amount of mental health coaching. Um, I'm constantly checking in with myself. I try to practice what I preach. I do a lot of mental health coaching as part of my profession. And so it's important for me to walk the walk. And I will say, I didn't have anxiety, or I didn't use those words. I didn't have anxiety until I became a mom. And I don't know if that's about just being a mom. I don't know if that's about being a mom in perimenopause or just all the hormones going bananas. But I will say that I also suffered from chronic migraines as a kid. And looking back, I now realize that those weren't innocuous, that growing up in a highly functional yet dysfunctional household, that was probably anxiety way back then.
Mm,
So could have used
mm.
a lot of this vocabulary and insight back as a little girl.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing. I think the more we talk about this, the easier it is to one, not feel alone, and also recognize that there's lots of different ways that we can support our mental health. A couple of things you said are very true for me too. I think it's this constant kind of monitoring, checking in with myself. I find my mental health kind of ebbs and flows. Sometimes it's external factors where I'm having a hard time, whether it's work or something happening at home. Sometimes it's hormonal, probably oftentimes it's hormonal, depends on like the time of month. I definitely utilize some preventative methods, exercise for sure. I try and eat healthy. I also feel that when I'm moving my body and when I'm eating well, not dieting, but like eating good whole foods, I definitely notice a difference. And I've done talk therapy. I ebb and flow with that. I've been in and out of it again, going back to like checking in and seeing kind of where I'm at. You know, if I'm in a phase where I'm struggling, I will meet with a therapist. And that to me has been really life changing. Just to touch upon the barrier of time, I have done both in person but also online therapy. More online now than in person, just given, I'm sit at a computer all day. It fits better into my lifestyle. I really do believe that if you can find a good therapist, the modality matters less. I have made some really great connections with people virtually. So if anyone is on the fence and they're considering it, but worried that online therapy might not be good, it may not be, but I can just say from my experience, I've had really positive experiences online with a therapist. So huge plug to that. And then lastly, talking with friends, finding a circle of people that I can. So maybe it's like my friend therapist, but just having an outlet, sharing these things, getting them out of here, it has been very helpful for me as well.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing all that. And we'll put, I guess I should say, we will put a bunch of resources. There's also lots of free resources available out there. And I think that sometimes we just don't know where to look. So we can put some of that in our show notes to make it a little bit easier for listeners if they're not sure where to turn.
And comment please if you have resources that you'd like to share. Really, we want to hear from you. So if there are things that we don't know about, please feel free to comment, whether it's on Instagram or in the comment section on the YouTube page. Like, let us know what else is out there because we are a community and sharing is caring. So don't hesitate there.
Also, one other thought related to all of this, but not specifically to what you're doing or I'm doing, Jenny. This kind of goes back to the language that we use with our kids, or just the language we use as a society right now. I think I think what's important for all of us to remember is that there is a healthy amount of stress and anxiety. Specifically, I'm talking about anxiety, not depression and all the other major mental health categories, but our bodies and our brains need a certain amount of stress and anxiety to stay motivated, right? That's healthy. It's the anxiety that motivates us to do well at a meeting. It's the anxiety that motivates us to meet a deadline, right? That fuels you. And so I think that as much as we've gone the other way with giving our kids vocabulary and talking openly about stress and anxiety. I think that the term gets thrown around so loosely that at least I notice it with my kiddos that like all anxiety is a problem and we must do something to solve it. It's like, no. But then again, Sabrina Carpenter has a song about it, so I can't compete with Sabrina Carpenter.
No, no.
All right. All right, listeners. Well, that's a wrap. Stay tuned for our next poll. And to do that, you need to follow us on social, head to our website, and get on our email list and check your spam folder. And I know we've talked a lot about what Jenny and I are doing. You all might be wondering, what do our husbands do to support their mental health? Well, you are not going to hear what they do, but you are going to hear from a dude. That's right. Our next episode, we are going to have a male guest on talking about his journey with mental health and what his toolbox looks like. Get on the socials, follow us on YouTube, subscribe everywhere, and you won't miss it.
Yes. And until then, keep your secrets safe unless you're telling us.